My hidden cameras survived the bulldozers and captured the one mistake Patty never knew she made. I left my Montana ranch for 1 week to inspect a bridge in another state. When I came home, my house wasn't damaged. It was gone, bulldozed to the ground, replaced by a sign announcing a luxury lodge the HOA planned to build on my land. Their president smiled as she handed me a demolition permit with my forged signature, convinced she'd already won. What she didn't know was that she had overlooked one thing that would unravel everything. Stay with me, because every document, every hidden camera, and every lie leads to an ending no one on that hill saw coming. And if stories about ordinary Americans standing their ground through truth and the law mean something to you, consider subscribing. You won't want to miss what's next. I had spent 7 days crawling through the steel skeleton of a highway bridge in Idaho, checking expansion joints, measuring stress fractures, and signing off on repairs that would keep thousands of strangers safe every day. By the time I'd crossed back into Montana, all I wanted was my own dirt road, my own porch, and the quiet view across the valley that reminded me why I had never sold the ranch. The tires of my old pickup crunched over the gravel as I turned off the county highway onto the private access road. The gate opened with the same remote I'd used for years. Everything felt familiar until I reached the last bend. I slowed instinctively. Something was wrong. The ridge ahead looked empty. For a heartbeat, my mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. The stone chimney that had always stood above the pine trees was gone. The roofline I'd rebuilt board by board had vanished. Even the cottonwood beside the front porch no longer broke the horizon. I pressed harder on the accelerator. Dust drifted across the hilltop where my home should have been. When I finally reached the crest, my truck rolled to a stop without me remembering touching the brakes. Nothing remained. The house I'd spent 11 years rebuilding stone by stone had been reduced to a field of shattered masonry and splintered timber. Tire tracks from excavators carved deep scars across the yard. My workshop had become a pile of twisted steel. The garage where I kept my restored pickup and my father's old Willys Jeep was nothing more than collapsed concrete and broken beams. A bright white construction sign stood in the center of the destruction. Future home of Hollow Ridge Mountain Lodge, luxury living begins here. For several seconds I simply stared. Not because I didn't understand what I was looking at, because my mind couldn't understand how it was possible. I climbed out of the truck slowly. Every step across the broken ground felt unreal. There was the stone from the fireplace I'd cut myself, the iron hinge from the front gate, pieces of the cedar porch railing I'd sanded one summer, while my father sat nearby criticizing every shortcut I tried to take. Nothing had burned. Nothing had collapsed. This hadn't been an accident. Someone had deliberately erased my home. I knelt beside the cracked foundation and brushed dust from one of the original cornerstones. The survey marker beside it was still standing exactly where it had always been. The property line hadn't moved. Only the house was gone. An SUV climbed the hill behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Patricia Holloway stepped out wearing pressed slacks, polished boots, and the kind of smile people wear when they believe they've already won. 2 private security guards followed her, but remained near the vehicle. "I was wondering when you'd get back," she said pleasantly. I remained where I was. "What happened to my house?" "It was removed." "By who?" "The association." She answered as casually as if she were discussing lawn maintenance. It had become an unsafe structure. We had no choice. I looked around the hill again. Unsafe. I'd inspected bridges carrying 40-ton trucks. I'd designed retaining walls that had survived mountain winters for decades. I knew exactly what structural failure looked like. My house hadn't failed. Someone had ordered it destroyed. Patty opened a leather folder and extended several papers toward me. "The documentation explains everything." I accepted the packet without another word. She seemed disappointed by my lack of reaction. "I know this is emotional," she continued, "but once you calm down, you'll realize this benefits everyone. The association is prepared to offer compensation if you're willing to cooperate." I ignored the offer. Instead, I looked down at the first page. Emergency demolition authorization. Interesting. Very interesting. My eyes moved slowly across the document. Parcel number, inspection date, owner signature, approval seal. I had spent years reviewing engineering reports where a single incorrect number could shut down an entire project. Small mistakes mattered. This paperwork contained several. The parcel number referenced property that wasn't mine. The inspection date fell on Tuesday. I had been standing inside an Idaho bridge inspection meeting that entire day with 20 engineers who could prove it. The approval seal had expired months earlier. And the signature? I almost laughed. Whoever forged it had clearly seen my name. They had never seen my handwriting. Patty kept talking. The HOA acted within its authority. I finally looked up. What authority? The community's authority. My ranch isn't part of your community. It is now. Her confidence never wavered. Behind her, the two guards exchanged an uneasy glance. I lowered my eyes back to the paperwork. No court case number, no judge's name, no county order, no engineering report attached. Just bold statements pretending to be legal facts. Patty mistook my silence for surrender. I think you'll find fighting this would become expensive. I folded the papers carefully, not angrily, carefully. Then I slipped them into my jacket. You finished? I asked. She frowned. Excuse me? I asked if you're finished. Her smile faded slightly. I've said everything that needs saying. I nodded once. Good. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Not to call anyone, just to photograph every inch of the demolition permit before even a corner became wrinkled. Patty watched me with growing irritation. You should really think about accepting our settlement. I didn't answer. Instead, I photographed the sign announcing the future lodge, then the excavator tracks, then the broken foundation, then the untouched survey monument standing exactly where it always had. Finally, I looked once more at the permit. 4 impossible mistakes. 4. No competent court would have allowed even one. Only one question remained. Who believed they could erase a man's home, using paperwork that never should have existed in the first place? I slipped the demolition permit back into its folder and looked directly at Patricia Holloway. You've made a serious mistake. She smiled as though she'd heard those words before. No, Mr. Bennett, we've corrected one. She gestured toward the construction sign planted in what had been my front yard. The community has been waiting years for this project. My ranch isn't your community. It will be. There wasn't a trace of uncertainty in her voice. She honestly believed the matter was finished. I didn't answer. People usually mistake silence for surrender. As an engineer, I'd learned years ago that silence often meant someone was measuring where the structure would fail. I photographed every page of the permit before sliding it into my truck. Then I called the one person I trusted more than any document. Rebecca Lawson answered on the second ring. Cole? My house is gone. There was a long pause. What do you mean gone? I mean demolished. Another silence. Then her voice became calm. Don't touch anything. I wasn't planning to. Good. Treat it like an accident investigation. Photograph everything before anyone moves a single stone. I already started. Excellent. Now answer one question. I'm listening. Did your security cameras survive? I stopped. Before leaving for Idaho, I'd checked every camera on the ranch. More importantly, none of them stored footage inside the house. Every recording uploaded automatically to a remote server in Helena. Patty had destroyed the building, but she never asked where the recordings went. I don't know yet, I admitted. Rebecca didn't hesitate. Find out before sunset. She disconnected. I climbed back into my truck and began driving the property line instead of heading home. There wasn't a home left to return to. The western fence still stood. The cattle gate remained locked. Every survey monument was exactly where I'd installed protective sleeves around them years earlier. Nothing suggested a boundary dispute, only a demolition. Near the entrance, someone waved me down. It was Ethan Miller. The retired rancher lived across the county road and had watched over neighboring properties for nearly 30 years. Cole. His face carried the expression people wear at funerals. I heard you got back. You saw this happen? He nodded slowly. Wednesday morning. Who came? 2 excavators, 3 dump trucks, sheriff's deputies? No, just private security. He removed his hat. I asked Patty what was going on. And? She said you'd signed everything. I looked at him without speaking. Said you'd sold the hill. I never did. I know that now. Ethan kicked at the gravel. I should have questioned it harder. You believed what she told you. I did. What else? He frowned while searching his memory. The demolition company foreman kept asking for paperwork. He did? Twice that I heard. What happened? Patty showed him something in a folder. After that, they started knocking your walls down. That was interesting. Very interesting. If the contractor had doubts, someone else might too. As Ethan returned home, another pickup climbed the hill. Black county vehicle, gold lettering. Sheriff Daniel Harper stepped out carrying a notebook. Cole. Sheriff. I've had 3 calls already. I imagine you have. He looked across the flattened foundation. This yours? My deed says it is. I'll need to verify everything. You should. Unlike Patty, Harper wasn't reaching conclusions. He was gathering facts. I'd also appreciate if nobody enters the property until I finish documenting the site. You'll have no argument from me. Patty suddenly appeared again, walking confidently toward us. Sheriff, this has already been resolved through the association. Harper held up one hand without looking at her. I haven't determined that. She frowned. The demolition was lawful. Maybe. The paperwork, I'll review the paperwork myself. For the first time all afternoon, Patty looked slightly uncomfortable. Harper accepted the demolition packet from her. His eyes moved slowly across the first page. He stopped, then looked again. Without saying anything, he folded the papers and slipped them into an evidence envelope. I'll be contacting the county permitting office. There won't be any problem, Patty answered quickly. We'll see. She forced another smile. I have a board meeting. Harper nodded once. So do I. She walked away without another word. The sheriff watched her leave before turning back to me. Don't leave town. I wasn't planning to. As his truck disappeared down the access road, my phone vibrated. Rebecca had sent only one sentence. Log into your camera server immediately. Don't assume they missed everything. I opened the app. The loading wheel spun for several long seconds. Then the first camera connected. Online, the second, online, third, online. Every camera had survived. And one thumbnail froze my hand over the screen. It showed Patty standing in my front yard beside an excavator before the first wall ever came down. She wasn't watching the demolition. She was giving the orders. I tapped the video. The timestamp appeared first. Wednesday, 8:17 a.m., exactly 2 days after I'd left Montana. The camera overlooked my front gate from a cedar post nearly 70 yards away. I'd installed it years earlier after a bear wandered through the ranch, never imagining it would one day record something far more destructive. The footage began with Travis Boone's demolition convoy rolling through my gate. Nobody asked permission. One worker cut the chains securing the entrance. Another swung the gate open. Then Patricia Holloway's SUV drove calmly onto my property. She climbed out carrying the same leather folder she'd handed me earlier that afternoon. The foreman approached her immediately. Even without audio, I could see him pointing toward my house, then toward the paperwork. He wasn't convinced. Patty smiled. She opened the folder, showed him several pages. The foreman hesitated. Then she pointed directly at my house. He nodded. Seconds later, the first excavator lowered its bucket toward my front porch. I downloaded the clip, then the next, and the next. Every camera had survived. The exterior system covered nearly every approach to the ranch. Camera 2 overlooked the workshop. Camera 3 watched the garage. Camera 4 faced the rear pasture. By the time I finished reviewing the timeline, I had nearly 6 hours of uninterrupted footage. Rebecca Lawson arrived before sunset carrying 2 banker's boxes and a portable hard drive. She didn't waste time asking how I felt. "What do we have?" I handed her the tablet. She watched silently for several minutes, then looked up. This just became much bigger. How much bigger? They knowingly entered private property. She paused the video where workers cut my gate lock. Criminal trespass. She skipped ahead. Excavators pushing into the house. Intentional property destruction. Another clip. Workers carrying a heavy steel safe from beneath my study floor. I leaned closer. I never noticed that. Rebecca froze the frame. There. 4 men struggled with the fireproof safe, loading it into the back of a black utility trailer. Patty stood beside them. One worker appeared to ask a question. She answered by tapping the paperwork in her hand before waving them toward the trailer. They took it. They certainly did. My deeds were inside. Rebecca looked at me sharply. What else? Original survey copies, engineering certifications, family documents. Good, I frowned. Good? If they removed it themselves, they just expanded this case. She copied the video onto her drive. Theft is easier to explain to a jury than boundary law. She immediately began drafting emergency filings on her laptop. Within an hour, she had prepared a request for an injunction freezing every activity on my ranch until ownership could be determined by the court. If construction starts tomorrow, she said, your damages become harder to calculate. So we stop it. We stop everything. Before midnight, she filed electronically with the county judge. At sunrise, my phone rang. Rebecca didn't bother saying hello. We got it. The injunction? Signed 23 minutes ago. I exhaled slowly. No construction, no excavation, no transfer of property. Nobody touches your ranch until the court says otherwise. For the first time since coming home, the hill was legally protected. An hour later, Sheriff Daniel Harper returned with 2 deputies. He carried bright yellow evidence tape. I've received the court order. Rebecca handed him copies. Harper nodded. My office will secure the site. Patty arrived less than 15 minutes later, furious. You can't stop this project. Harper calmly pointed toward the court order. I just did. You don't understand. I understand exactly enough. She marched toward the foundation before one deputy stepped into her path. Ma'am, this is HOA property. Harper shook his head. Until the court determines that, nobody enters. Her confidence cracked for the first time. This is ridiculous, Rebecca answered quietly. No. She held up the tablet displaying one of the security videos. This is, Patty glanced at the screen. Only for a second. But it was enough. She recognized the footage immediately. Her expression changed. Not fear. Calculation. She looked toward the broken house, then toward the cedar fence line, then back at the cameras mounted high beneath the surviving utility poles. You had cameras? I finally spoke. You never asked. Patty said nothing. She turned, climbed back into her SUV, and drove away much faster than she'd arrived. Rebecca watched the dust settle behind her. She's worried now. Because of the demolition? Rebecca shook her head. No. She clicked open the next recording. The audio icon appeared. I don't think she's worried about what she did. She pressed play. Patty's voice came through the speakers with perfect clarity. Leave nothing standing. If there's anything left, he'll rebuild. Rebecca looked at me. That's devastating. I thought that was the worst recording. Then the next video started, and Patty said something even she never imagined would survive. The camera overlooked the front yard from the corner of my workshop. Patty stood beside Travis Boone while one excavator idled behind them. Travis pointed toward the property markers. Even through the video, his hesitation was obvious. I've never worked a residential demolition without a court order, he said. The microphone caught Patty's reply perfectly. You don't need one. What if the owner comes back? He won't be back until Monday. And the land? It'll belong to the HOA before he figures out what happened. The recording ended. Rebecca closed the laptop slowly. She didn't just authorize the demolition. I nodded. She admitted the plan. Exactly. Less than an hour later, we were driving toward the county survey office. If Patty intended to claim my ranch had somehow become HOA property, there had to be paperwork supporting that story, or pretending to. Logan Pierce was already waiting when we arrived. He had spent nearly 40 years surveying ranches, timberland, and public rights-of-way across western Montana. When Rebecca explained why we were there, he disappeared into the records room without another question. He returned carrying a weathered tube nearly 4 feet long. I wondered if somebody would ask for this one someday. He carefully spread the original county survey across a drafting table. Every line was hand-drawn, every monument carefully labeled, every signature certified decades before the HOA ever existed. Logan traced one finger along the western edge. Here's Silver Ridge. Then he moved another 200 feet uphill. And here's your ranch. Rebecca leaned closer. So there was never any overlap? Never. What about shared ownership? Logan smiled. The access road crosses HOA land. He tapped another line. But this easement only allows travel. No ownership. No ownership. No management authority. No assessment rights. No expansion. I asked the question that mattered most. Could anyone reasonably mistake this? Logan looked at me. Only if they ignored the survey. Rebecca requested certified copies immediately. While Logan prepared them, he opened another file drawer. I found something else. He handed us a county letter dated 6 years earlier. Silver Ridge Homeowners Association. Boundary expansion request. Status: denied. Reason: applicant failed to establish any ownership interest in adjoining ranch property. Rebecca read the last page twice, then looked at Logan. Was Patty notified? Personally. You remember? I remember because she argued with me for 20 minutes. What did she want? Logan's expression hardened. She wanted me to redraw the boundary. And? I told her survey lines don't move because somebody wants a better view. That single sentence changed everything. Patty hadn't misunderstood the property line. She already knew exactly where it was. She'd been told. Officially. Years ago. As we walked back toward the parking lot, Rebecca's phone rang. She answered immediately. Rebecca Lawson. A man's voice spoke quietly through the speaker. My name is Travis Boone. Rebecca exchanged a quick glance with me. I'm listening. I think I need an attorney. You need to tell me why. There was a long pause. I never saw a judge's order. Rebecca switched the phone to speaker. Explain. Mrs. Holloway handed me what looked like an emergency authorization. And? I asked where the court order was. What did she say? She told me HOA emergency powers replaced it. Rebecca didn't interrupt. I've been in demolition 22 years, Travis continued. That never sounded right. So why did you continue? Another silence. She offered 40% above my bid if the job was finished before Mr. Bennett got home. Rebecca wrote something in her notebook. Did you keep the paperwork? I photographed every page. Why? Because halfway through the job, his voice slowed. I realized I might be destroying somebody's house without legal authority. Rebecca looked directly at me. Power had shifted again. She spoke carefully. Mr. Boone, don't delete anything. I won't. Don't repair your phone. I won't. Don't discuss this with Patty Holloway. I wasn't planning to. Before hanging up, Travis added one final sentence. There's something else. What? She kept texting me the same instruction. Rebecca asked him to repeat it exactly. His answer sent a chill through the room. She said, leave nothing standing. Rebecca ended the call with Travis Boone and closed her notebook. He's no longer defending her. He sounds scared. He should be. She looked at me for a moment. So should Patty. The emergency injunction had frozen every piece of equipment on my ranch. Yellow evidence tape now stretched across the entrance where excavators had rolled through only days earlier. Construction had stopped, but the legal fight had only begun. The next morning, Rebecca introduced me to Detective Ryan Foster. He specialized in financial crimes, not property disputes. At first, I didn't understand why he had been assigned. Then he explained. People don't usually destroy a 6-acre ranch because they dislike the owner. So why do they? They destroy it because somebody expects to make more money afterward. He spread several bank statements across the conference table. Let's follow the money. The Silver Ridge HOA had transferred nearly $400,000 from its reserve account over the previous 6 months. None of the payments went directly to construction companies. Instead, they flowed through businesses with polished names: Frontier Land Consulting, Western Compliance Group, Peak Administrative Services. Ryan opened each corporate registration one by one. No employees. Next file. No office. Next. Registered to a mailbox. He leaned back. These aren't operating businesses. What are they? Receivers. For what? We'll find out. By late afternoon, another name kept appearing at the end of nearly every transfer. Summit Ridge Development. Unlike the others, it actually existed. Ryan frowned, but somebody worked very hard to make sure nobody noticed it. Before he could explain further, Rebecca's phone buzzed. She answered quietly. Rebecca Lawson. The woman on the other end sounded nervous. My name is Megan Collins. Rebecca immediately recognized it. The HOA treasurer. Yes. I need to meet. Rebecca glanced at me. About what? I can't talk over the phone. Are you safe? I don't know anymore. There was a long pause before Megan continued. I signed transfers I shouldn't have signed. Did Patty direct them? Everyone. Rebecca chose her next words carefully. If you cooperate now, that matters. I know. Another silence. I don't want to be the only one blamed. We agreed to meet the following morning. After hanging up, Ryan quietly smiled. Internal witnesses usually appear when the money starts disappearing. That evening, Silver Ridge held an emergency HOA meeting. Residents packed the community hall expecting answers. Instead, they received reassurances. Patty stood confidently at the front of the room. The Bennett lawsuit is delaying progress. Someone raised a hand. What lawsuit? A frivolous one. Another homeowner stood. Why are our dues paying demolition contractors? Patty dismissed the question. Necessary community improvements. Then another voice. Why has almost $400,000 left the reserve account? The room grew noticeably quieter. Patty shuffled her notes. Financial reports will be provided at the appropriate time. An older homeowner stood near the back. My wife and I have lived here 15 years. He folded his arms. We've never approved a luxury lodge. Several others nodded. Patty tried to regain control. The board has authority. The board, another resident interrupted, doesn't own Mr. Bennett's ranch. Murmurs spread through the room. People who had trusted her only days earlier were now asking questions she'd never expected to answer. Outside, Rebecca received another message from Ryan. He forwarded one corporate filing, Summit Ridge Development, registered manager, redacted under trust ownership. Ryan added only one sentence beneath it. Someone is hiding the real beneficiary. I stared at the screen. Destroying my ranch had never been the objective. Owning the hill had. Rebecca folded the document and looked toward the courthouse across the street. This case just changed. How? It isn't only about trespass anymore. She tapped the company registration. It's about motive. As we walked toward the parking lot, Ryan called one last time. I traced another payment. To where? It circled through 2 shell companies, he paused, and landed in an account connected to Summit Ridge Development. Can you identify the owner? Not yet. Another brief silence. But whoever controls that company has been planning this long before your house ever came down. Ryan ended the call, leaving the words hanging between Rebecca and me. This had never been about a personal grudge. It had been a business plan. The following morning, Ryan requested an emergency subpoena for the ownership records behind Summit Ridge Development. Whoever built the company had hidden it behind layers of trusts, registered agents, and holding companies. It looked complicated until the forensic accountant began tracing the signatures instead of the company names. Within hours, a pattern appeared. Every major payment approved by the HOA eventually circled back through the same network of accounts. Different company names, different invoices, the same destination. Ryan spread the flowchart across Rebecca's conference table. Whoever designed this wanted it to look like routine consulting expenses. Rebecca studied the dates. They're not random. Ryan nodded. The payments increase every time Patty pushes the clubhouse project. I looked closer. The largest transfers had all occurred before I ever left for Idaho. So the money was moving before the demolition. Exactly. He circled one date with a red pen. This transfer happened 12 days before your business trip. Rebecca immediately understood what that meant. The demolition wasn't the beginning. Ryan looked at both of us. It was the final step. That afternoon, another discovery arrived. Investigators executing the subpoena recovered architectural files from the office hired to design the future lodge. The first page stopped all conversation. Hollow Ridge Mountain Lodge concept approval date, 23 days before the demolition permit. The next drawing was even worse. It showed the exact footprint of my ranch house. The proposed lodge wasn't merely planned for my land. Its foundation had been designed to occupy the precise location where my living room had stood. Rebecca slowly turned another page. Infinity overlook, wedding pavilion, private dining hall, expanded parking. Every structure depended on my house disappearing first. There it is, she said quietly. The motive. Late that evening, Patty fought back. A professionally produced statement appeared across local television and social media. She stood in front of the HOA entrance, smiling calmly. Mr. Bennett's lawsuit threatens every homeowner in Silver Ridge. She described me as an unreasonable landowner refusing to cooperate with community improvements. She insisted the demolition had been performed only after engineers identified dangerous structural conditions. She never mentioned the forged permit. Never mentioned the cameras, never mentioned the injunction. Within hours, neighbors began arguing online. Some believed her, others demanded proof. Rebecca closed the television. She isn't trying to convince the judge. Who is she trying to convince? The jury pool. I considered responding publicly. Rebecca stopped me immediately. No interviews. People are believing her. Some are. She smiled slightly. They're also asking questions. The next morning, Sheriff Harper called. You'll want to hear this. I'm listening. We executed the court order. On the ranch? No. Then where? The HOA office. Investigators copied meeting minutes, financial records, and project files before anything could disappear. Harper paused. Somebody tried shredding documents after the injunction was issued. Did they succeed? Not completely. That was the first sign Patty knew control was slipping. Then, just before sunset, Rebecca received another message. Megan Collins, only 4 words. I kept everything. Rebecca immediately arranged a private meeting. The following evening, Megan arrived carrying an old leather notebook clutched tightly against her chest. She looked exhausted. I couldn't keep pretending. Rebecca motioned for her to sit. What do you have? Megan placed the notebook on the table. My personal ledger. Why keep one? She swallowed hard. Because I stopped trusting Patty months ago. Rebecca opened the first page. Every transfer, every invoice, every board vote, every amount. Handwritten, dated, cross-referenced. Then Rebecca stopped turning pages. Near the center of the notebook, one entry had been written in different ink. Someone had underlined it twice. Projected lodge revenue, $14.8 million. Beside it was a single handwritten note. Acquire Bennett property before public announcement. Rebecca slowly looked up. Megan. There's more. She reached into her purse and removed a small flash drive. I think this is what finally destroys her. Rebecca accepted it without saying a word. Megan's hands were shaking. I copied everything the night after the demolition, she said. Patty kept telling everyone to delete emails, but she forgot the server automatically backed them up before anyone touched them. Rebecca plugged the drive into her laptop. Folders appeared one after another. Board minutes, financial transfers, project files, internal emails. Then one folder caught everyone's attention. Private communications. Rebecca opened it. Hundreds of messages filled the screen. Most were ordinary scheduling emails. Then she found one marked urgent. Patty had sent it to several board members 3 weeks before my business trip. Bennett leaves Monday. Demolition must be completed before he returns. Delays are unacceptable. The room fell silent. Ryan Foster leaned closer. That destroys any claim of an emergency. Rebecca nodded. Emergencies aren't scheduled around vacation calendars. Megan reached into her purse again. I didn't tell you everything. She unfolded several handwritten sheets. My personal ledger wasn't just tracking money. Rebecca studied the pages. Beside nearly every unauthorized payment, Megan had written Patty's verbal instructions during board meetings. One note stood out immediately. Transfer approved without board vote. President instructed signatures to be added later. Another. Use reserve account. Homeowners won't notice until annual audit. Then another. Acquire Bennett property before announcing development investors. Ryan photographed every page. This isn't bookkeeping anymore. What is it? I asked. A roadmap. Before anyone could respond, Rebecca's phone rang. The caller identified herself immediately. Judith Crane, the city clerk. I need to correct something. Rebecca placed the call on speaker. I've been waiting. Judith took a deep breath. My office never approved that demolition. We know. I stamped a receipt acknowledging the paperwork had been submitted. But not approved? Never. What happened afterward? Patty came back 2 days later. And the receipt had been altered. Rebecca stopped writing. Altered how? My acknowledgement stamp had been copied onto a fake approval page. Did you keep records? I kept everything. Emails, phone logs, scanned originals. Then Judith added something none of us expected. I also recorded our meeting. Rebecca looked up sharply. You recorded Patty? I was afraid she'd threaten me again. The recording arrived less than 15 minutes later. Patty's voice was unmistakable. If you don't cooperate, your husband's maintenance contracts with Silver Ridge disappear. Judith answered quietly. I can't approve something that isn't legal. You don't have to approve it. Patty laughed. I'll handle the paperwork. Ryan immediately saved another copy. Coercion, Rebecca nodded, and evidence tampering. The witnesses kept coming. Later that afternoon, Travis Boone arrived carrying his work phone. I figured you'd want the originals. He handed it directly to Rebecca. She opened Patty's messages. The first one simply confirmed the demolition date. The second instructed him to finish before Monday morning. The third was impossible to explain away. Destroy the well, remove the power pedestal, take down the stone gate, leave nothing usable for rebuilding. Travis lowered his eyes. I knew something wasn't right. Why didn't you stop? I should have. Rebecca placed the phone beside Megan's ledger. No. She looked directly at him. You did something just as important. What? You kept the truth. By evening, the evidence covered nearly every inch of Rebecca's conference table. Survey maps, camera footage, financial ledgers, forged paperwork, contractor messages, recorded threats. Each piece supported the next. No single witness stood alone anymore. The story was beginning to tell itself. As Ryan packed the evidence into secure boxes, he opened one final audio file recovered from Megan's flash drive. The timestamp showed it had been recorded during a private HOA board meeting. Patty's voice filled the room. Calm, confident, certain. Once the house is gone, she paused long enough for someone to laugh. Nobody can stop us. Nobody spoke after the recording ended. Rebecca quietly closed the laptop. They've stopped building a legal defense. I looked at the growing stack of evidence. What are they defending now? She answered without hesitation. Whatever time they have left before trial. 3 weeks later, Courtroom 2 of the Gallatin County Courthouse was filled long before Judge Samuel Whitmore entered. Silver Ridge residents occupied nearly every bench. Some had come to support Patty. Others had come because they wanted answers about the missing reserve funds. I sat beside Rebecca Lawson with a single binder in front of me. It contained no speeches, only evidence. Judge Whitmore took his seat and looked across the courtroom. This court is not here to settle neighborhood politics, he said evenly. It is here to determine whether property was unlawfully destroyed through fraud. The room fell silent. Patty sat at the defense table wearing the same confident expression I'd seen on the day she handed me the demolition permit. Her attorneys argued first. They claimed the HOA believed my house presented an immediate safety risk. They argued the demolition had been an unfortunate misunderstanding carried out in good faith. They insisted no one intended to deprive me of my property. Judge Whitmore listened without interruption. Then he nodded toward Rebecca. Call your first witness. Rebecca stood. The plaintiff calls Logan Pierce. Logan carried the original certified survey into the courtroom inside the same weathered tube I'd seen weeks earlier. He placed the map before the judge. This survey was recorded with the county decades before Silver Ridge Homeowners Association existed. Rebecca pointed to the boundary. Does the HOA include Mr. Bennett's ranch? No. Has it ever? No. Has the boundary ever changed? No. Rebecca produced the county's earlier denial of the HOA's expansion request. Was Patricia Holloway informed of this decision? Personally, the defense objected. Judge Whitmore overruled it immediately. The witness may answer. Logan nodded. I personally explained that the association had no ownership interest beyond its recorded boundary. Rebecca needed nothing more. The next witness was Judith Crane. She calmly explained how her office processed permit applications. She identified the receipt stamp Patty later transformed into what appeared to be an approval. Then Rebecca played the recording. Patty's voice echoed through the courtroom. If you don't cooperate, your husband's contracts disappear. Several jurors exchanged quick glances. Judge Whitmore wrote a note without looking up. The defense declined to cross-examine. Rebecca called Travis Boone next. He admitted he had never received a signed court order. Only paperwork Patty assured him was sufficient. Rebecca displayed the text messages on the courtroom monitors. Finish before Monday. Destroy the gate. Leave nothing standing. Travis looked directly at the judge. If I'd known there wasn't a lawful order, I never would have started that demolition. The courtroom remained perfectly still. Then Rebecca called Megan Collins. Megan carried the leather notebook she'd hidden for months. She described unauthorized transfers from HOA reserve accounts, board approvals that never happened, signatures added after meetings had ended. Finally, she opened the page containing Patty's own handwritten projection. Projected lodge revenue, $14.8 million. Rebecca asked one simple question. What property was necessary to complete that project? Megan turned toward me. Mr. Bennett's ranch. The defense tried to argue the notebook represented personal opinions rather than official records. Rebecca responded by introducing matching bank transfers already authenticated by Detective Ryan Foster's investigation. Every handwritten amount matched the financial records exactly. The objection disappeared. When my turn came, Rebecca asked no dramatic questions. Instead, she placed the original blueprints of my house onto the evidence screen. Did you build this home? I rebuilt it. Over how many years? 11. What was destroyed? The house. She waited. What else? My workshop, the solar system, the well, my garage, the stone wall, my father's restored Jeep, I paused, and every improvement tied permanently to the property. The defense attorney stood. Mr. Bennett, your insurance can compensate for much of this, correct? It can compensate for replacement costs. But not everything. No. What can't it replace? I looked toward the photographs of the demolished ranch. Time. The courtroom became unusually quiet. You can insure lumber, I continued calmly. You can insure machinery. But you can't insure 11 years of work. No one interrupted. Rebecca thanked me and returned to counsel table. Judge Whitmore glanced toward the defense. Your witness. Patty slowly stood. She walked to the witness stand, still trying to project confidence. Her attorney asked whether every decision had been made for community safety. Yes. Were you motivated by personal profit? Absolutely not, he smiled. No further questions. Rebecca approached without a single document in her hands. Mrs. Holloway. Patty nodded confidently. Rebecca smiled politely. I only have one exhibit left. Patty frowned slightly. What exhibit? Rebecca looked toward the courtroom clerk. The security footage Mrs. Holloway has never seen. Every head in the courtroom turned toward the monitor. Rebecca pressed play. The first image showed my ranch exactly as it had stood before the demolition. Then the timestamp appeared. Wednesday, 8:14 a.m. Patty stepped into view carrying the same leather folder she had later handed me after my house was gone. She pointed toward the front porch. Travis Boone walked beside her, still holding rolled construction plans. His voice came through clearly. Mrs. Holloway, we still don't have a judge's order. Patty answered without hesitation. We won't need one. The courtroom remained silent. The video continued. Travis pointed toward one of my survey markers. What if this boundary isn't part of the HOA? Patty barely looked at it. Once the house is gone, the paperwork catches up. Rebecca paused the recording. She faced Patty. Did you just hear your own voice? Patty shifted slightly. I don't know the context. Rebecca nodded. Let's continue. The next clip began. Workers surrounded the fireproof safe taken from beneath my study floor. One employee asked where it should go. Patty answered immediately. Load it into my trailer. Another worker hesitated. What about the owner? He won't know what's missing. Rebecca stopped the video again. Mrs. Holloway, did the HOA inventory that property? Patty remained silent. Did you report removing that safe? No answer. Judge Whitmore looked over his glasses. The witness will answer. Patty finally spoke. I don't recall. Rebecca didn't argue. She simply played the next recording. This time the excavator stood beside my garage. Travis asked another question. Do we remove the utilities? Patty pointed toward the electrical service. Everything. The well? Everything. The stone wall? Leave nothing standing. The final words echoed through the courtroom. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. Even Patty's attorneys stared at the screen without speaking. Rebecca quietly walked back to counsel table before producing one final exhibit. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Detective Ryan Foster. Ryan carried a stack of financial records nearly 3 inches thick. He explained each transfer carefully. No HOA payment went directly toward community improvements. He projected a flowchart onto the courtroom monitor. Every consulting company eventually transferred money to Summit Ridge Development. Rebecca asked the obvious question. Who owned Summit Ridge Development? Ryan displayed another document. A trust. And who controlled that trust? Ryan placed the certified ownership records before the judge. The sole beneficiary, he looked toward Patty, was Patricia Holloway. A murmur swept across the gallery before Judge Whitmore called for order. Ryan continued. The projected profit after acquiring Mr. Bennett's ranch totaled approximately $14.8 million. Rebecca held up Megan's handwritten ledger. It matches your investigation? Every figure. Every transfer. Every one. The defense attorney stood slowly. He requested a brief recess. Judge Whitmore denied it. We will proceed. Patty's attorney sat back down. For the first time since trial began, he avoided looking at his own client. Rebecca approached the witness stand one final time. Mrs. Holloway, Patty looked exhausted now. You've testified this demolition was motivated by public safety. Yes. Rebecca displayed the architectural plans recovered during discovery. They were completed 23 days before the demolition permit. Patty said nothing. The lodge occupies the exact footprint of Mr. Bennett's home. Still nothing. The projected revenue flows into a company you secretly controlled. Silence. The demolition occurred during the exact week Mr. Bennett was scheduled to be out of state. Patty lowered her eyes. Rebecca asked one final question. Was this ever about public safety? No answer came. Judge Whitmore folded his hands. The witness may step down. Patty walked back to the defense table without speaking. Her attorneys leaned together for several moments before one of them finally stood. Your Honor. His voice lacked the confidence it carried that morning. The defense has no further witnesses. Judge Whitmore nodded once. I have heard enough. He looked across the courtroom, then toward me. This matter is no longer about an administrative error. His eyes settled on Patty. The evidence establishes a deliberate plan involving forged documents, unlawful demolition, theft of private property, misuse of association funds, and an intentional attempt to seize land through fraud. The courtroom became completely still. Judge Whitmore closed the case file. I will recess briefly before returning with the court's ruling. As everyone slowly stood, nobody looked toward me. Every eye in the courtroom remained fixed on Patty Holloway, because everyone now understood the same thing. The only question left was how completely the law was about to dismantle everything she had built. 40 minutes later, everyone returned to the courtroom. Judge Samuel Whitmore took his seat without looking at either table. He opened a thick folder, adjusted his glasses, and began reading from the findings. This court finds that the demolition of Mr. Cole Bennett's residence was not the result of mistake, negligence, or good faith reliance upon defective information. He paused. It was a deliberate campaign built upon forged documents, false representations, unlawful entry, theft of private property, misuse of association funds, and an organized effort to seize land the defendants knew they did not own. No one spoke. Patty stared at the bench, her hands clasped tightly together. Judge Whitmore continued, "The evidence establishes that Mrs. Holloway knew the true property boundary, concealed that knowledge from contractors and board members, manipulated public records, and attempted to profit personally from the destruction of another citizen's home." He turned a page. "The law cannot reward deliberate wrongdoing by limiting recovery to market value alone. Were this court to do so, any determined wrongdoer could simply destroy property they wished to acquire and later claim the cost as an acceptable business expense." The courtroom remained silent. "This court will not create such an incentive." He looked directly at me. "Accordingly, the court orders complete restoration." Every eye lifted. "Silver Ridge Homeowners Association, jointly and severally with Patricia Holloway, shall fully reconstruct Mr. Bennett's residence using materials and workmanship equal to or exceeding those destroyed." He continued listing each item. The stone exterior, the timber roof, the workshop, the garage, the well system, the solar installation, the stone gate, the perimeter walls, the surrounding landscape damaged during demolition. All reconstruction shall proceed under the supervision of an independent engineer selected by Mr. Bennett and approved by this court. Patty's attorney slowly lowered his head. Judge Whitmore wasn't finished. "In addition, this court awards $10 million in compensatory and punitive damages, exclusive of reconstruction costs." A collective gasp spread across the gallery. "The court further freezes all remaining assets connected to Summit Ridge development pending satisfaction of this judgment." He looked toward the clerk. "Copies of this ruling shall be forwarded to the county prosecutor for consideration of criminal charges relating to forgery, theft, fraud, evidence tampering, and financial misconduct." Then came the final order. "Patricia Holloway is permanently prohibited from serving as an officer, director, or board member of any homeowners association within this state." Patty suddenly stood. "This will bankrupt the association." Judge Whitmore met her eyes. "No, Mrs. Holloway." His voice never changed. "Your decisions did that." She started to speak again. "The court has ruled." When she refused to sit, the bailiff stepped quietly beside her. Her attorney finally placed a hand on her arm. "It's over." For the first time since I had returned to an empty hilltop, Patty said nothing. Weeks later, reconstruction began. Independent engineers documented every surviving foundation stone before work started. Salvaged blocks from the original fireplace were cleaned, cataloged, and placed back into the rebuilt chimney exactly where they had once stood. New timber matched the original dimensions. The workshop returned first, followed by the garage, then the house itself. Sheriff Daniel Harper stopped by one afternoon while crews reset the front gate. "Looks familiar." "That was the idea," he smiled. "Doesn't happen often." "What doesn't?" "Watching the truth rebuild something." Well, Silver Ridge changed. An interim board replaced every officer involved in the scheme. Residents approved new bylaws requiring independent legal review before any major property action, mandatory financial audits, recorded board meetings, and written county verification for every future boundary dispute. Megan Collins cooperated fully with prosecutors. Travis Boone accepted responsibility for his mistakes, adopted strict verification policies for his company, and later testified that no demolition crew should ever begin work without a verified court order in hand. Judith Crane's recordings led the county to redesign its permitting process so that receipt stamps could never again be mistaken for legal approval. Months later, the house stood complete. Not larger, not grander, simply home again. On my first evening back, I carried 3 items into the rebuilt living room: the original certified survey map, a copy of Judge Whitmore's final judgment, and 1 twisted steel bolt recovered from the rubble after the demolition. I placed them inside a simple wooden display beside the restored fireplace. Below them sat a small engraved plaque. "Power does not create ownership. Forged paper does not create truth. and no one becomes the owner of another man's land by destroying what stands upon it. As the sun settled behind the Montana hills, I stepped onto the rebuilt porch and looked across the valley. The construction sign promising the Hollow Ridge Mountain Lodge was gone. Summit Ridge Development no longer existed. The blueprints for the resort remained locked away as evidence in a criminal case. The ranch remained exactly where it had always belonged. People sometimes ask whether I felt satisfied watching Patty lose everything. The truth is simpler than that. I never wanted revenge. I wanted my land respected. I wanted the law to matter. I wanted the next person facing someone who believed power was stronger than ownership to know one thing. Keep your records. Keep your evidence. Stay patient. Because lies can flatten a house, but they cannot survive the truth forever.
If there's one lesson this story leaves behind, it's that protecting what's matter doesn't always begin with fighting louder. It begins with staying calm enough to protect the facts. Con didn't rebuild his life by arguing, making threats, or giving in frustration. He documented everything, respected the legal process, and trusted that the truth could stand on its own. In the end, it wasn't one dramatic moment that changed everything. It was every deed, every survey, every recording, and every honest witness coming together at the right time. There's something deeply American about it. Land isn't just dust or timber or stone. For many people, it's where memories are made, families grow, and years of hard work take shape. Standing up for what's right doesn't always look loud or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like patience, integrity, and refusing to let fear make your decision for you. I'd love to hear what you think. If you believe Con handled this the right way, type yes in the comments. And if you ever had to deal with an HOA, a property dispute, or a situation where keeping good records make all the difference, share your story below. Your experience might encourage someone else who faces a difficult moment of their own. And if you enjoy stories about ordinary people standing their ground with honesty, perseverance, and the rule of law, I'd be honored to help you subscribe. There are many more stories like this still to come, and I'd love for you to join us for the next one.